I'm Bargav and I will talk about our paper title Are Attribute Inference Attacks Just Imputation? Before going into the details of the talk, I will first introduce the notions of imputation and attribute inference. In machine learning, imputation refers to inferring the missing fields or attributes in a dataset. This can range from simple rule based imputation to more advanced correlation based imputation. Here, we consider a neural network based imputation model that has access to the data distribution and uses the correlation between the attributes to infer the missing attribute. Consider this running example of Texas hospital dataset where the adversary knows all the attribute values of a patient except the ethnicity. The imputation model will predict the ethnicity based on the other known attribute values. Traditionally, imputation is not considered a privacy risk since it is just revealing statistics about the data distribution that is considered public knowledge. Attribute inference is similar to imputation but with one major difference. Here, the adversary additionally has access to a model trained on a finite dataset sampled from the distribution. However, this is considered a privacy risk since here the adversary uses additional information revealed by the model to infer the unknown attribute value. This is especially true when the underlying data distribution is private or when the adversary has limited knowledge of the data distribution to begin with. In this work, we explore different threat settings based on the information the adversary has about the underlying data distribution. This can be broken into two levels. On the first level, the adversary may either know the training distribution or not. In the latter case, the adversary might instead have access to some other public distribution. On the second level, the adversary either has access to a large set of samples from the distribution or has a small sample set to train an attack model. Prior attribute inference attacks mainly consider the threat model where the adversary has significant knowledge over the training distribution and demonstrate high attribute inference success rate. However, be sure that the imputation itself does well in such cases. Hence, this is not a privacy risk. In our experiments, we use the imputation and prior attribute inference attacks to predict different sensitive attributes across two datasets and report the average inference accuracies. As shown, neither of the prior attacks performs significantly better than the imputation. Note that all these prior attacks are black box attacks. Hence, these attacks show no evidence that the model leaks significant information about the sensitive attribute. Though this does not exclude the possibility of a stronger white box attack, which we explore later. In our work, we explore all the threat settings and show that the attribute inference attacks do outperform imputation when the adversary has limited information about the underlying data distribution. We consider a fine-grained variant of attribute inference called sensitive value inference, where the adversary aims to infer a subset of candidate records that have a particular sensitive outcome for the target attribute. For instance, for the Texas hospital dataset, if the target attribute is ethnicity, then the sensitive outcome could be Hispanic ethnicity. To find the subset of candidate records with Hispanic ethnicity, the adversary can sort all the candidate records with respect to a prediction score and select the top k records. We measure the attack success in terms of positive predictive value metric, which indicates the precision of the attack. For this talk, we will consider an example where a neural network model is trained on Texas hospital dataset to predict the major surgery procedure for a patient. The inference task is to identify the patient with Hispanic ethnicity out of 10,000 records. The x-axis depicts the top k records and the y-axis shows the PPV value for the attack. A higher PPV value indicates a strong attack. Since the dataset has around 28% Hispanic patients, a random guess would have 0.28 PPV. On the other hand, an ideal predictor would predict all the 2800 Hispanic records first and hence have a PPV of 1 for up to top 2800. We train a state-of-art imputation model over 50,000 records from the data distribution. As shown, this model achieves high PPV for up to top 10 records and the PPV decreases for higher k values. The line depicts the average PPV over 5 independent runs and the shaded region depicts the standard deviation. In comparison, even the best black box attribute inference attack does not perform any better than random guessing. This attack is based on Yom et al. Attack that uses target model confidence to rank the top k candidate records. We propose a white box attribute inference attack that uses the output of the most correlated neurons of the target model to identify the sensitive attribute value. While this attack does significantly better than the prior black box attacks, it still does not outperform the strong imputation attack. These results suggest that when the adversary has a considerable knowledge of the underlying training distribution, they can train a strong imputation model that itself does well in inferring the missing attribute. Having additional access to the target model does not improve this ability to infer the attribute, though this need not be the case when the adversary has limited or no information of the training distribution. For instance, if we consider the case where the adversary does not know the training distribution D and instead only has access to a different distribution D prime, in this case, the imputation attack might be biased towards the distribution D prime, and hence it may not do well in inferring the missing attributes for the record sample from D. Having access to the model can offset this lack of information and benefit the adversary in the inference task. Another case can be when the adversary can only sample a limited number of records from the training distribution to train the imputation model. Even here, having access to the target model can provide additional information to the adversary. Going back to the previous example, where the imputation model trained on 50,000 records from the training distribution performs well in the Hispanic inference task, if instead the adversary only has 500 records from the training distribution, the imputation model performs much worse than the strong imputation case. Though we note that even in this case, the imputation does better than random guessing. We show that our white box attribute inference attacks can outperform the imputation in this data deficit case. Our white box attribute inference attack identifies the neurons that are the most correlated with the sensitive outcome and uses their average scaled output to infer the sensitive attribute value. For the Texas hospital dataset, these are the neurons that have the largest activation values when the query patient has Hispanic ethnicity. If we sort all the neurons with respect to their Pearson correlation value for Hispanic ethnicity, we find that the leftmost neurons have a higher activation value when the query record has Hispanic ethnicity. For our experiments, we choose the top 10 neurons and use their aggregate scale output as a signal to infer the Hispanic ethnicity. This neuron output based attack is able to achieve much higher PPV values across different top case settings when compared to the imputation attack in the same limited data setting. We observe a consistent trend as we vary the size of the dataset available to the adversary. The imputation PPV decreases as the dataset size decreases. On the other hand, our white box attack consistently achieves similar PPV values across different data sizes. We observe a similar trend even when we change the data distribution available to the adversary. The table compares the average PPV values of the attacks for predicting the top 100 Hispanic candidate records for different dataset and distribution settings. Colored values highlight the cases where the model access provides additional information and as a consequence, the neuron output attack outperforms the imputation. We also tried training the target model with differential privacy as a defense against the attribute attacks. However, our results show that the attack PPV remains the same even when the model is trained with differential privacy, as shown in the first two columns in the table. Furthermore, we also note that the PPV is similar across both training and non-training candidate records. Thus, the attack uses the distribution information leaked by the model. In conclusion, the attribute inference attacks are similar to imputation in the sense that they also use the distribution information to infer the sensitive attribute, although they obtain the distribution information from the model. While this distribution inference is not a privacy risk when the distribution is public, in the cases where the distribution itself is private, then releasing the model can reveal sensitive information about the underlying training distribution. With this, I will conclude the talk, and all our experiments can be found in the GitHub repository.